Demetrius Edward Flenory was born on June 21, 1968, in Cleveland, Ohio. He was the first child born to Charles and Lucille Flenory. His younger brother, Terry Lee, was born 2 years later, in the family's new home, Detroit. The Flenory brothers came of age during the 1980s, when their impoverished hometown was besieged by the ravages of the crack boom. Local headlines were dominated by the exploits of notorious local drug organizations, such as YBI and Pony Down. The evening news also gave extensive coverage to the lives, and oftentimes deaths, of homegrown street legends like Maserati Rick Carter, Butch and Ed Hanserd. Demetrius and Terry reportedly began their criminal careers selling $50 bags of crack in the mid-1980s, as teenagers. Demetrius, who was known as Meechie around this time, dropped out of high school in the 10th grade, at the age of 16, to devote his full attention to the drug business, and the brothers quickly progressed to selling 2 kilos worth of cocaine a week. Before the 1980s came to a close, Demetrius made his first trip to the city that would become his adopted home, Atlanta, Georgia. While not members themselves, the brothers developed strong ties to a Northwest Detroit gang called the PA Boys, named after their base, Puritan Avenue. The PA Boys, however, were under intense scrutiny by law enforcement throughout the 1980s and 90s. Demetrius' association with PA Boys members is what initially brought him to the attention of the Drug Enforcement Administration. In 1988, Demetrius was sentenced to 2 years probation following a conviction for drug possession. In the mid-1990s, the brothers traveled to California, seeking a direct connection to foreign suppliers, so as to reduce the number of people with knowledge of their dealings. They were eventually introduced to Mexican cartel sources, through California drug trafficker Wayne Joyner. The brothers laundered their drug proceeds through a taxi service that Terry founded, using the money that he was awarded by a settlement of a malpractice suit, following a botched eye surgery. In 1994, Demetrius and a Colombian accomplice were arrested on drug charges, which were eventually dropped due to insufficient evidence. By the mid-1990s, the brothers had expanded outside of Detroit, and even Michigan. They began making inroads into other states, including Kentucky, Georgia, Missouri, Texas, and California. When the dominant cocaine traffickers in Atlanta, Georgia, the Miami Boys, were dissolved, as a result of a string of federal convictions in the early 1990s, the two took advantage of the situation and quickly took steps to fill the vacuum. After negotiating with local distributors, in order to become the new dominant suppliers in the area, Demetrius relocated to the city, in order to oversee operations in the region. Despite being arrested numerous times beginning in his late teens, Demetrius avoided serving prison time throughout his long criminal career. In February 1996, Demetrius was arrested at an Atlanta strip club, Magic City, and charged with assault. He was accused of throwing a bottle at another club-goer and slicing his neck. The charges were eventually dropped. On October 4, undercover U.S. Customs agents were given $300,000 from employees of the Flenory brothers in a cocaine buy in Michigan. On the 29th, agents seized $250,000 from Flenory associates during a drug transaction in Detroit. That same day, Sherman Oaks, California police seized $576,000 in cash from Terry Flenory's longtime girlfriend, Tunissa Welsh. On October 3, 1997, police in Spalding, Georgia, seized $143,221 in cash from suspected BMF member Martez Jackson. On October 30, Demetrius was alleged by the DEA to have murdered a federal informant in Atlanta. Though he was never charged, he was believed to have been the shooter in the murder of Dennis Kingsley Walker, a Detroit drug dealer who had become one of their cooperating witnesses. This incident triggered a low-priority investigation of Demetrius by the DEA. In 1998, Demetrius was arrested during a raid of one of his Atlanta stash houses. He was charged with felony obstruction and marijuana possession. On May 10, 1999, police in Polk County, Texas, seized 18 kilos of cocaine from employees of the brothers. That same day, Beaumont, Texas police seized $424,190 in cash during the arrest of Flenory associate Bruce Martin. In 2000, Demetrius was arrested for DUI in California. That same year, Terry permanently relocated to Los Angeles in order to oversee the receipt of the cocaine shipments from Mexico. While they remained partners, the brothers effectively split the organization into two halves, with each overseeing his own distinct subgroup from his respective base of operations, Demetrius in Atlanta and Terry in Los Angeles. Reportedly, during this time period, the Flenory's previously unnamed organization began to be called the Black Mafia Family, or BMF. It's worth noting that BMF is also a ready acronym for the nickname of one of its founders, Big Meech Flenory. On December 2, 17 kilos of cocaine were seized by authorities during the arrest of a BMF associate in Flagstaff, Arizona. On February 5, 2001, Kansas City, Missouri police confiscated 9 kilos of cocaine from a BMF member. BMF grew to over 500 members and operated in 11 states including Georgia, California, Missouri, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Kentucky, New York, Texas, Alabama, and Michigan. The organization dominated the drug trade in Atlanta and other cities, largely due to the lower prices they offered to distributors. Because they obtained their cocaine wholesale, directly from a Mexican cartel for $9,000 per kilo, and thereby bypassed the usual middlemen costs, BMF was able to pass the savings on to street dealers, at $17,000 per kilo. The Flenory's direct connection to Mexico also allowed for a purer product, estimated to be 90% pure, which they in turn marketed to distributors. BMF named their special brand of cocaine Hummer and reaped the profits derived from its enormous popularity with lower-level dealers, and ultimately, the users themselves. Investigators estimate that BMF was selling 600 kilos per month. After nearly 15 years of more or less staying under the radar of both the general public and law enforcement, Demetrius began to raise his public profile not long into the 21st century. Demetrius became a regular figure on the Atlanta, Georgia, club scene and was usually accompanied by dozens of BMF members, all adorned in T-shirts, bearing the organization's abbreviated moniker. He and his entourage could frequently be seen at the famed strip club, Magic City. Demetrius and BMF are widely credited with popularizing the practice of making it rain, wherein a large amount of money is thrown into the air so that it can shower down onto a stripper. 2 days after his birthday in 2003, he threw a party to celebrate the occasion at music mogul Sean Combs' restaurant, Justin's. An after-party was held at one of his suburban stash houses, nicknamed the White House. The year 2003 would not only mark the beginning of BMF going public, it would also usher in the beginning of serious and permanent scrutiny by several law enforcement agencies. On January 26, 2003, $723,000 in cash was confiscated by a Texas highway patrolman during a traffic stop in Gray County from BMF couriers Brian Garnett and Kim Williams. Both were arrested on money laundering charges. On August 14, 2003, Oxford County, Arkansas police seized 27 kilos from a BMF member. The Atlanta investigation into BMF in the city of Atlanta was triggered by an attempted robbery at the home of the organization's chief financial officer, William Marshall. One of 2 intruders was shot after an exchange of gunfire at Marshall's townhouse on September 7. Local police, who arrived at the scene, recovered a kilo of cocaine and reported an empty walk-in safe on the premises. On October 28, law enforcement coalition comprised of the DEA, IRS, and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Michigan formed an initiative named Operation Motor City Mafia. The task force was solely devoted to bringing down BMF. The very next month, Demetrius' anonymity was permanently destroyed when his public reputation as a world-class partier was forever eclipsed by his reputation to the public and law enforcement alike as a gangster. On the night of November 11, while partying at Atlanta's Club Chaos, Demetrius became involved in an altercation with Sean Diddy Combs' former bodyguard, Anthony Jones. Reportedly, Jones was escorted from the premises following a shouting match with Demetrius over an ex-girlfriend of Jones. Instead of leaving, he and longtime associate, Lamont Gurdy, waited for the BMF leader in the parking lot, reportedly while leaning on Demetrius' Cadillac. Upon exiting the club, Demetrius and BMF member Amin Haight, a Compton, California native, whom Demetrius recruited to BMF in 1999, were allegedly confronted by Jones and Gurdy. In the ensuing gunfire, Haight was shot in the foot while Demetrius was shot in the buttocks. Gurdy was shot dead, and Jones died from gunshots to the chest after being rushed to Grady Memorial Hospital. An anonymous witness, who was never named and never testified, told police that she saw Demetrius fire a minimum of 7 shots. Law enforcement recovered 24 spent shell casings after arriving at the scene. Both Demetrius and Haidt, who was never charged in the shooting, were confronted by police that morning at Fulton Regional Hospital, and Demetrius was charged with 2 counts of murder. Demetrius was granted bond on the condition that he submit to house arrest, which lasted 6 months. Though the charges were eventually dropped due to lack of evidence, Demetrius, and the shooting itself, received extensive media coverage. The fallout from the incident also included a change in city policy, as Atlanta nightclubs would subsequently be mandated to close by 2 a.m. as opposed to 4 a.m. Not insignificantly, the DEA-led dismantling of the PA Boys neared its completion 6 days after the shooting, when 8 of the organization's leaders were indicted on November 17, 2003. The most significant consequence of the shooting, and subsequent police scrutiny, resulted in a permanent rift between the Flenory brothers that likewise caused a schism inside BMF. Terry, who had always been relatively low-key, revealed on police wiretaps that he blamed Demetrius for the stepped-up law enforcement focus on the organization, and felt that his high-profile and flamboyant lifestyle threatened the organization and the 2 brothers' freedom. Following the 2003 shootout, BMF was effectively split into 2 halves, headed by each of the brothers. Each half was now comprised of a separate and distinct group of members, and while each brother maintained authority over the organization as a whole, very few BMF employees would continue to work with and report to both Flenorys. The following year, the law enforcement investigation into BMF intensified, and Demetrius increased his public profile even further. In March, Demetrius made his first major foray into legitimizing his organization by entering the music business. He incorporated a hip-hop music label, BMF Entertainment, and founded The Juice, a lifestyle and music magazine. The first issue boasted dual covers, one of its executive editor, Demetrius himself, and another of then up-and-coming rapper and close BMF associate, Young Jeezy. BMF Entertainment focused on the career of its sole artist, rapper Bleu Davinci. Davinci's promotion included high-priced music videos and songs featuring high-profile rap artists including Fabulous and Young Jeezy, both of whom received promotion in Atlanta early in their careers from BMF. Reportedly, this promotion included paying DJs to play Young Jeezy's songs in nightclubs. During this period, Demetrius commissioned billboards in Atlanta which read, "The world is BMF's." Throughout March and April, state troopers made several traffic stops, resulting in the seizure of substantial amounts of cash and narcotics linked to BMF. One such stop outside of St. Louis yielded over 100 kilos of cocaine. Another stop in Fenton, Missouri, turned up over $500,000 in cash. Tremaine Graham, a BMF associate, and son-in-law of Atlanta's first female African-American mayor, Shirley Franklin, was arrested in April on drug trafficking charges. That spring, another law enforcement joint task force devoted to BMF was formed, which included the participation of the Drug Enforcement Agency and the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. Around this time, federal agents were granted warrants to wiretap members of the organization. While Demetrius was never caught on a wiretap, over 1,000 of Terry's calls were eventually intercepted. In June, Demetrius celebrated his 36th birthday at Atlanta's 25,000 square feet megaclub compound. The ostentatious party included $100,000 worth of rented wildlife including lions, zebras, and an elephant. The year 2004 brought more shootings linked to BMF members as well. On July 25, Demetrius' third-in-command, Fleming Daniels, was implicated in another club shooting, in which he allegedly murdered another man in the parking lot of Atlanta nightclub, the Velvet Room. 3 days later, $199,000 in cash was confiscated from Martez Jackson by Atlanta police. On September 5, a federal witness, Ulysses Hackett, and his girlfriend were shot to death in her apartment by gunmen allegedly linked to BMF. The murders are alleged to have been ordered to prevent Hackett from testifying against his co-defendants, all BMF associates, in a federal drug conspiracy case. On October 15 and 17, 2 separate shootings were attributed to high-ranking BMF members, Omari McCree and Jeffrey Lear. The 2 were alleged to have perpetrated shootings at strip club, Jazzy T's, and nightclub, The Atrium. In October, Demetrius himself, along with others, including a former bodyguard for rap star Jay-Z, named Hanserd, was arrested again, on minor charges at a police checkpoint, established as a result of the recent rash of shootings in Atlanta. BMF garnered even more headlines in 2005, owing to various incidents involving celebrities. On May 10, then upcoming rapper, Radrick, Gucci Man Davis, shot and killed a home invader in Decatur, Georgia, and was later charged with murder. The shooting victim was one of 5 perpetrators, alleged by Davis attorneys, to have been acting on orders from BMF to kill the rapper, as part of an ongoing war of words between Davis and fellow rapper, BMF associate Young Jeezy. Because of the perpetrator's alleged connection to BMF, Davis was questioned by the ATF, DEA and FBI. Davis was the only person involved in the incident to ever be arrested, and formally accused of a crime, the charges for which were eventually dropped. Both Flenory brothers were apprehended in October. On October 20, Demetrius was tracked and arrested, in a rented $1.2 million mansion, located in a suburb in Frisco, Texas. On October 27, Terry was arrested alongside other BMF associates, in a private home in a suburb, outside of St. Louis, Missouri. Demetrius was granted $100,000 bond with the strict stipulation that he remain under house arrest until trial, in the custody of his mother, Lucille. As the number of arrests of BMF members and associates mounted, it became clear just how wide the scope of the investigation against BMF was, and apparently just how large and widespread the organization itself was. According to an October 28, 2005 press release by the DEA, the investigation against BMF involved several law enforcement agencies, including the United States Marshals Service. The DEA also revealed the assistance of several U.S. attorneys' offices nationwide. By late October, 47 BMF members and associates had been arrested, and 635 kilos of cocaine and $14 million in cash and assets linked to the organization had been seized. On February 1, 2006, high-ranking BMF member Jeffrey Lear was sentenced to 15 years in prison after pleading guilty to cocaine trafficking. His girlfriend, Courtney Williams, was sentenced to 5 years after pleading guilty to conspiring to trafficking cocaine. By 2007, the federal indictment against BMF included 150 members of the organization. However, only Demetrius and Terry Flenory were charged under the CCE, Continuing Criminal Enterprise Statute, which can carry a life sentence. The U.S. government alleged that BMF generated revenue upwards of $270 million throughout its existence, and ordered forfeiture of more than 30 pieces of jewelry, 13 residences, 35 vehicles, and property located throughout the country. Demetrius reportedly owned the only white Maybach 62, the ultra-luxury sedan brand owned by Mercedes, priced at $430,000 in the US at the time, which he'd had shipped from Saudi Arabia. Owing to the two brothers' years-long estrangement and distinctly different methods of conducting business, they faced different charges. Demetrius was indicted on 6 counts, CCE, 4 counts of cocaine conspiracy and 1 count of money laundering. Terry was indicted on 11 counts, CCE, 6 counts of cocaine conspiracy, 3 counts of using a cell phone in violation of the Federal Controlled Substance Act, and 1 count of money laundering. As he was never caught on a federal wiretap, and prosecutors didn't have many witnesses against him, Demetrius had a stronger case than Terry's. However, Demetrius and his defense team decided that a trial would prove too risky, as a conviction meant a mandatory life sentence. On November 29, 2007, Demetrius pleaded guilty to leading a criminal enterprise before the United States District Court in Detroit. In September 2008, both Flenory brothers received 30-year sentences in federal prison for heading a drug trafficking organization under the CCE statute. Demetrius Flenory is serving his sentence at United States Penitentiary, a medium-security federal facility in Atlanta, Georgia, and is scheduled for release on February 25, 2032. Terry Flenory was released to home confinement on May 5, 2020, after being granted a compassionate release due to health ailments and an effort from the Federal Bureau of Prisons to limit the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic within federal prisons. Demetrius Flenory also sought his release under the same guidelines. However, a federal judge rejected the move, claiming it would be premature to authorize his release as his prison record suggests otherwise, and continues to promote himself as a drug kingpin.